Welcome to the DNA show.
DNA? Dude, are we doing a science show?
No, D is for Dennis.
Oh, A is for Andy.
And N is for and?
Oh, man, nerds.
Oh, yeah.
We're nerds, dude.
Yeah. Well, good. Then we can talk about comics and movies and pop culture and sports.
Sports. Sports and nerds. Yeah, we're going to make that work.
All right, let's roll.
Heidi ho, welcome back to the Dennis and Andy show. This is Andy.
And this is Dennis. Welcome back.
That was Chadwick Boseman, who we lost last week to colon cancer from his famous role Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
Wakanda Forever. Sad, and very unexpected news.
That, you know, when I was, it was Friday night, and I was watching TV, and I was scrolling through Facebook, as I do with my ADHD, doing two things at once. And, you know, sometimes I'll get on, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll get on a Facebook scroll for like a half hour, where literally TV's on, and it's on my phone, so it's not on my iPad or anything, and I'm just scrolling with my thumb at the newsfeed.
Yep.
It had to be like a half hour, and then there's this AP story that a guy shared. It was the first I saw it after a half hour of scrolling, right? So the first thing I do is go to Google, and I'm like, no way. No way.
Yep.
And I Google it, and there it is. Chadwick Boseman passes away at 43 of colon cancer, and you're just like, yeah, I mean, you're shocked. Like everybody was, just because he was so young, but also the fact that it said he was battling it for 4 years, which means through all his Marvel stuff, and we're not discounting any of his other movies, to be up front, we talk comics and stuff, so we're talking Marvel stuff. But, you know, he was doing all that physical stuff while battling colon cancer.
Yep.
And not just like, oh, stage 1. I think he was diagnosed stage 3.
Yeah. So, and when you look at the Marvel movies, and maybe there were signs, and, you know, they can green screen things in and out. Maybe they knew, maybe they didn't. But all I know is, yeah, we had no idea. And we heard rumors, you know, last year, but it wasn't about colon cancer. We had seen pictures of him. He had lost weight. But, you know, from my perspective, my first thought was, well, maybe it's going to be like Christian Bale and Machinist, you know, where he's doing another role and he's got to lose weight. That means he'll have to bulk up for the next movie, and that's kind of what we thought.
Exactly. These guys always go up and down. And, you know, well, like when he played Thurgood Marshall.
Yeah.
You're not going to be in superhero shape to play that person. You know, that real life person. It's not, you know, Thurgood Marshall wasn't like some jack superhero. So, of course, you know, getting ready for that film, he's going to, you know, change diet and, like you said, lose weight for different roles and stuff. So,
well, and you hear so many theories that went out beforehand. They're like, well, there were rumors, I should say, that, you know, they were looking at recasting Black Panther. And I was like, nah, conspiracy theory. There's no way that's going to happen. And I was like, and why would he? Unless he's in some other contract. But Disney's contract are so tight, I can't imagine where it would succumb to anything else. And he was the face of Black Panther. So I'm like, unless there's fighting going on behind the scenes, it wouldn't make sense. And I wouldn't understand it. Well, if those rumors were true, this actually would explain it.
well, I mean, there's a brief article on CBR that says, the headline is, Marvel was unaware of Chadwick Boseman's illness. Starr was confident he would film Black Panther 2. And it pretty much says that, you know, he was planning to start getting ready for filming next year by, you know, working out and everything in September of this year, because it takes those, you know, that many months to get in that type of shape. And Kevin Feige, I always pronounce his last name wrong. Kevin Feige says, let's see, according to The Hollywood Reporter, Marvel Studios president and chief creative officer Kevin Feige received an urgent but vague email regarding Boseman on August 28th. Feige read the message within an hour, but by then Boseman had already passed away. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, look, it's his life. It's his choice. You want to keep it private? Keep it private,
Yep, and anyway, there was a lot of ripple effects going through, a lot of sadness because it was, nobody was worse, so I don't think anybody was prepped for it. But now this brings up the big question. I mean, Black Panther 2 was going to be highly anticipated.
I think it's 2022, right?
Yeah, it was. So what do you do? I think I got an idea, but I think you had one too.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Okay, so... my first thought is because I thought it was nice of ABC, just sidetrack. ABC showed Black Panther on, their regular network channel. No commercials Sunday night, commercial free. So just like in the theaters and stuff. And then they had a nice tribute to him, to Chadwick after the movie and stuff. But watching the movie, one of the things I thought of is Michael B. Jordan's character, Killmonger. In the end of the movie, it looks like he doesn't make it, but they never really put a lid on it. Because him and, Killmonger, it was Killmonger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Killmonger and Black Panther are fighting. Black Panther ends up basically stabbing him through his Killmonger's suit when the energy's down or whatever, so he can do that. And, they go to watch the sunset, which was a callback from something earlier in the film. Anyhow, Killmonger says he doesn't want to live, basically behind bars, chained up. So at that moment, he pulls the knife out, which of course is the only thing keeping the blood from flowing. And when he pulls the knife out, he basically just keels over. But that keel over could be him it's not like he died automatically. He pulled the knife out and he passed out. And then you would assume from lack of blood loss at that point, he eventually passes away. But what if T'Challa uses one of those little beads that he used on the CIA dude whose name is escaping me now?
Oh, yeah, Freeman.
What if he uses one of those that he used on him earlier in the movie when he was shot in the back? Because he's like, no, I'm not going to let him die. And, they create a storyline that that's what he did. And since Black Panther, he's basically been a prisoner in Wakanda. But maybe he's been going through rehabilitation as well.
Oh, so you think he was down in the vibranium jail chambers?
Yeah, wherever.
Yeah.
And, he basically gets rehabilitated. They do some CG stuff in the beginning of Black Panther 2 to show, Black Panther, unfortunately, T'Challa being, killed off. And the mantle has to go on. And see his legacy, T'Challa, Black Panther, the Black Panther legacy, like it passed from father to son. It doesn't have to be to a relative, but he is a relative anyhow. He's a cousin. Right. And they see that the rehabilitation, he's been rehabbed or whatever, and they basically want to give Killmonger a chance at being the new Black Panther. And they pass it on to him.
See, now that's a good idea.
Because I love Michael B. Jordan as an actor.
I do too, and I thought he was great in the role. But instead, maybe T'Challa's dying, and they walk up to him and they say, he's ready. He's the one who needs it. So it's Chadwick Boseman's character, because they probably got all this extra footage from all the different filming between the different movies. They could have him laying there and then
like a Princess Leia thing.
Yes, exactly. And we'll just...
CG it.
Yep, and, pop over. He needs to be the one. He is ready to take over, and he knew that when he passed away. That's an interesting idea. I had a little bit different of an idea.
Angela Bassett.
Well, no, she would be. She's always great, but
she would be awesome.
yes,
but no,
It was funny because I also thought of Michael B. Jordan, but not being picked up that way. I would be like, well, who would be able to fill in? So, and I'm thinking of it from what happened in Avengers. You know, Tony Stark has the gauntlet. They have access to the soul gem, the whole 9 yards. They already know where they had to go in order to retrieve the soul in the first place. Why would they? And I'm assuming that he has passed away, you know, that he did die. And they wind up going and bringing him back into existence because unlike Black Widow, who couldn't do it because she gave her soul in order for the gem to come forward.
Right.
That doesn't hold true for the other people. They could bring him and use the soul gem or the gauntlet to basically bring him back and say, we need to do it. But again, it would be the same character. I would love him to pick up the mantle of doing it as long as his focus was to protect Wakanda, and they'd have to work that into the storyline like T'Challa would.
Yeah. Well, you know, you bring somebody back and you're like, look, dude, we literally just brought you back. It's time for you to step up.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the other route that's been discussed too, I've seen online, is, you know, his sister Shuri, because they did that in the comics.
They did, and it was okay. I mean, she's a good character.
I think in the comics it works. I think for the movie, the reason I couldn't see it working is just from the actor standpoint. It's big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
And Michael B. Jordan, to me, is on the same level acting-wise as Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, I'd put Chadwick Boseman a little higher with, you know, being, you know, the movies he's done. But, Michael B. Jordan's got a good filmography behind him as well.
And they're both good range for actors. I mean, and everything that they do. So, yeah.
And once again, nothing against the actress that plays Shuri, but, you know, until Black Panther, I had no idea who this actress was.
Yep.
You know, which, once again, isn't a bad thing. Everybody has their first role, and that leads them to other roles. But I think she needs to get more under her belt, and they need a name.
Yeah,
is what it comes down to, because Marvel's already set up. We go name, you know, for lead characters. Obviously, they go for name. You know, secondary characters, of course, they get lesser knowns and stuff. But, you know, they really try to get the best talent and stuff. And I don't know. I'm a Michael B. Jordan fan, so I think that would be cool. Yeah,
and I kind of agree. I think Shuri's a good character. She's a good, I would call it, straight man, a good backup character. She's a good, you know, a person to fill that type of a role. You know, I guess they could always go with, you know, Okoye. You know, she could fill in, you know, and on it. And again, I don't think that would be bad. And I mean, we all love her. For those of us that are Walking Dead fans, you know, we absolutely, you know, love her as an actress, and she could play that role. But again, you know, I don't know what they would do with it. It's interesting to see. But either way, it's going to be interesting. But man, it's just sad news.
There's another idea that crossed my mind for him as well. And hold on. Oh, Winston Duke and Baku.
Oh, hadn't even thought of that.
Who basically came to try and take the mantle away from him.
Yep.
In the beginning of Black Panther, he challenged him and lost.
Yes.
So if you want to take it that route, which is a more logical route, instead of saying, bring somebody back from the dead, or, my thing is he never died in the first place, you know, keep Killmonger, you know, dead, and you've already got Winston Duke, who, once again, has good screen cred behind him, wide variety of roles. I love him as an actor, seeing him in different roles and stuff.
Yeah.
And, he could do it.
No, I actually
He's got the
I
screen
hadn't really
presence
thought
too.
about
He's a
that.
big guy too.
And, M'Baku kind of went full circle because you're right. He challenged him. He separated himself, came back and did what was right for Wakanda.
Right.
And grew as a character, and deep inside, actually that would work too.
And he was in Endgame.
Yeah, he did.
He was in Infinity War. He was in Endgame. He's there. So
yeah, that's
he's a great actor.
idea.
And just speaking of his range, real quick, I'm blanking on the movie I saw him in that I thought, oh, Us. Remember Us?
Oh yeah, that.
He was fantastic in that movie, just playing basically the middle of the road dad or whatever,
And I thought he was the best in the entire movie.
He was
the
great.
dad.
He was throwing down some crap dad jokes like dads do. I mean, he was fantastic in that movie.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Spencer Confidential as well.
Yeah,
as Hawk. So I mean, he's just great. So
yep. I think that would work.
Well,
all right. So
moving on.
Movie theaters opened. Rejoicing time. Well, at least down by me.
Went to see a movie in a theater.
We did. So we already had kind of planned what movie are we going to see when the theaters open, and it was kind of a no-brainer for us comic book nerds. New Mutants was coming out. It has been coming out for the last several years with more release dates than Cats Have Lives. And it finally hit the theaters. So it was a no-brainer that was going to be our first movie.
Well, another thing, too, is I don't think when we went to the theater, they didn't have all the theaters open. So it was a limited playlist anyhow. And I think New Mutants was the only new one, and everything else was stuff that was just they brought back. Wasn't that the case?
Almost. No, because New Mutants Unhinged was actually technically the first. It was.
It was there when we went?
It was.
We could have done a twofer that day?
We could have, but we didn't, because Unhinged, I think, was the first movie to be released when the theaters opened, in theory, nationwide. Which, of course, I did see, which we'll bring up in another podcast. So I went and saw that the other night with a buddy of mine, and really interesting movie.
Wait. I didn't go. You saw a movie with somebody else?
I did.
You two-timing piece of garbage?
Why would that be? Because we went at night, and apparently it's too late for Andy to stay up.
Oh my God, I told you I wouldn't have got home till like pushing 10:30, dude. That is late.
10:30. Oh my God. Here's your Geritol, old man, and you're insured.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, so we went at night. It's what we needed to do. So anyway.
And when did we see New Mutants? Early bird during the day.
It was.
Perfect time.
It is. And on Friday?
No, Saturday when we went. Oh, you're talking about?
Yeah, we're this Friday. We're going to go see Tenet, which is the other one that we've been really waiting to see. So that movie review will be coming shortly.
That's right.
But needless to say, we did. Mutants was the first movie we were going to see, and the theaters now. So we were kind of unsure how they were going to work it with all the spatial requirements, but it's basically every other row which is open, the other ones are taped off, and then however big your party is, then there's 3 seats between you, so there's a lot of distance. So the movie theaters are at a very limited capacity right now. And, there's no refills on popcorn and soda, stuff like that. They're kind of limiting everything. But you really feel bad for what the movie theaters are going through. And, we're just trying to support them. They're coming out. It's been wonderful. We had a good time. And, we did our due diligence and stayed socially conscious and,
that's right.
and safe. And it was worth going.
It was, so the basic gist of the New Mutants movie is kind of an adaptation of a storyline from the 80s by Chris Claremont, the writer, and Bill Sienkiewicz, the artist, called the Demon Bear Saga, which centers around the character Dani, who's the Native American girl, New Mutant in the movie. And, I thought... excuse me. I thought they did a really good job. I mean, I don't think I can't think of any movie I've walked into with lower expectations
That's exactly
in my entire life. Because, like Dennis said, it was supposed to come out back in 2018, then 2019, then early 2020, and then with COVID, it got pushed. And then did they do reshoots?
Oh yeah, they tweaked it. They scheduled reshoots, but they re-edited it, and then they kept changing some stuff. And then they're like, well, then they talked about reshooting it and then sticking a little more money into it. But that's when Fox's rights went over to Marvel. Marvel doesn't know what to do with it because they were like, well, do we even want to continue this? Because it's part of the X-Men. For those of you that don't know, New Mutants are the younger X-Men that would have been under Professor X at the time and stuff like that. So what are they going to do with it? And ultimately, I think Marvel didn't know what to do with it, and they wound up just making it a short, concise movie. They originally had an extra credit scene, basically, at the end, and that was going to lead into the next movie. That's all gone now because I think they're just going to call this a one and done for now. What was interesting was they had a really good part in there, which, of course, they did some flashbacks. And by the way, there are going to be spoilers in this.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be spoilers.
So be aware of that. And if you don't want to hear the spoilers, wait till after the movie and come back and pick up and listen. But they wind up showing Danny gets some feedback and starts getting her visions, and she sees these children. And all of us that are comic book fans were like, oh, that was from Logan. They literally took scenes right out of Logan, which then you knew right away. All right, because we all thought it was Professor X who was the person in charge of the hospital. Nope. And as soon as you saw that, we already knew who was behind X-23 and all those kids. So we automatically knew it was Essex Corporation. So there weren't a lot of big twists in here. That was the one we were kind of waiting for. That was about the only big twist. But it was an interesting story because the New Mutants, from those of us who read them in comic books, they're the young kids. And Andy just went back and reread the original storyline, which was New Mutants 18, 19, and 20.
Yeah, from the 80s, the original series. So, and, we'll talk about, after we're done talking about the movie, we'll talk about how it compares to the original storyline. But in the movie, like Dennis was saying, so New Mutants, they're younger teenagers whose powers are just starting to manifest. And basically, Danielle Moonstar, who's played by actress Blue Hunt, in the beginning of the movie, her home and tribal area is being destroyed, and she's, her dad's like, oh, it's a tornado and whatnot, and you come to find out later, it's the Demon Bear, which is basically her fears coming to life to come get her, because that's her powers. Her power, she can manifest other people's fears,
their deepest, darkest
fears into, real life. So, she gets picked up and brought into this hospital where she meets Ron Sinclair, played by Maisie Williams, who you guys will know from Game of Thrones. Ron's power is she's a wolfsbane, and she can basically turn into a wolf. But she has the hybrid mode, too, which is human /
kind of like a werewolf.
Kind of like a werewolf, basically, yeah. Because when she turns into a wolf, at least in the movie, it's a wolf.
Yep.
It's a legit wolf. Not CG'd. It's a wolf. But most of the time in the movie, when she uses her power, she's the hybrid. So it's the actress with makeup effects. And then there's Ileana Rasputin, who is played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who I had no idea she had brown hair in real life, but like the comics, she has long, straight blonde hair. I guess her superhero name is Magic, right?
It's Magic. Ileana Rasputin, because she's actually the sister of Colossus, her ability is she's got a soul sword, which she summons, and her arm turns into like this big metal mechanical arm. She wields a soul sword, which is magical. And she actually has access, and they touch on it in the movie, where she has access to Limbo, which is a place that her and Lockheed created. Here's where it changes already a little bit different, because Lockheed is a little purple dragon.
Right.
That's Kitty Pryde's from
Right.
the X-Men. So they did a little twist in there, and we were like, but it was a puppet. That's how you first meet him, and it's like a little puppet
Well,
she
hand
walks
puppet,
around
yeah.
with. And it's adorable. I mean, we're like, oh my God, I wonder if that's Lockheed. Anyway, she has control over Limbo, and she has access to go in and disappear and whatnot.
Now, here's what I don't remember from the actual her introduction to comics. In the movie, they basically played it that when she was a young kid, she was molested. That's how they play. And so, her deepest, darkest fears, was that coming back? Was that her backstory in the comic? Because I don't know.
It was kind of similar. It in some ways they held true to the comics, but not in every respect.
Right.
But in that it was a little bit different. But the smiley faced men and stuff. I mean, yeah,
She's the only character that I didn't know that much about. I knew the sword, I knew the arm thing with the armor coming down when she created the sword, knew about Limbo.
Right.
But I didn't know her backstory. I also knew she was Colossus's sister, which I'm kind of a little disappointed they didn't touch on that at all. They didn't say anything like, well, your brother, because it does take place in the same universe. So you wonder if, when the movie was originally shot, if they did.
And they cut it out.
And they cut it because of everything that's happened.
And that it was actually my first thought was, I bet that was in there, and then with what's going on, I bet they edited it out and removed any references. And that's why, to me, it was strange, because the only reference that they made to the X universe was the Logan flashback for Essex,
Right.
which tied into X-23, which Colossus wasn't a part of.
No. And unless you... And if you're like me, who has seen all the movies, if it wasn't for Dennis going, oh my God, that's from Logan flashback, I would never have remembered that. I would have just been like, oh, it's just something they shot for the movie. But as soon as you said that, I remember,
And what was interesting is we walked into this, and I didn't look at anything, didn't want to see a review.
No.
I wanted to go in just cold turkey and just take it in. But with my expectations, with all of the changes and all the pushbacks, everything that came out of production was, this is going to be a turd. It's
Right.
going to be a turd.
Oh, yeah.
So we walked in going, yep, this is absolutely going to be a turd. And we were just prepared for that. And we walked in. And, as we get introduced, now, granted, it is a slow start. So the Demon Bear starts at the very beginning. And
you don't see it.
You don't see it. You hear it.
Right.
And then you don't see the manifestation right away, but it kills off her entire tribe. So when she wakes up in this quote-unquote hospital, Alice Braga, who plays Dr. Reyes, was there, and you don't know who she is, but she's the good doctor who's healing you and helping you.
She's there to help you learn how to use your powers once they manifest, and they had no idea what her powers are at this point, what Danny's powers are. So the whole point of coming to this place is, when your powers start to manifest, we can be here, we can help you, because even as Dr. Reyes says in the movie, a lot of mutants are the most powerful when they first get their powers because they don't know how to control them. And
Right.
they actually hurt more people that way. So this is their way of, helping out and doing good for mankind by, nope, we'll pull you in now so we can train you.
Right, and she states that my superior, my boss, he finds new mutants and helps them. So immediately you're thinking is Professor X.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, because that makes sense, because in the comics, it was Professor X bringing on the new mutants. Yeah, and then... But the doctor, she played her part very well. Again, I thought it was a good casting choice. Alice Braga, I mean, we remembered her from like Predators, I Am Legend, Elysium, all solid movies and stuff with her in. And then this is when you get introduced to some of the other characters. Sam Guthrie, which I don't think they used the name Cannonball
Yeah, they
in
did.
the movie. Did they? Okay.
I think the only name they didn't drop was Roberto DaCosta, who is Sunspot, played by Henry Zaga. I don't think they ever said anything about him, but with Sam Guthrie, who is Cannonball in the comics, it wasn't that they ever called him that. It was he was using his power, and Ron was talking to Danny, and said something like, "Oh yeah, he just shoots off like a cannonball."
Oh yeah,
So she
you're
just
right.
kind of alluded to it, which I thought was cool. It's like, oh okay. It's like with Ron, they never called her Wolfsbane,
Right.
but they, I think one of them made a joke about Wolfie or
Yeah, and she's got
something
these
along those
W's that
Right.
that were, burned into her as like you would a cow when you brand them.
yeah. she was
And
branded.
well, Charlie Heaton, he played an interesting version of Cannonball. He played a Southern accent. So in the comics, he's got short, blonde, spiked hair and stuff, and it's like a flat top. And in this one, we all know Charlie from Stranger Things.
He was kind of he was almost. I just thought of this now. He was kind of the grunge dude.
He was.
He was like a grunge. Like when you think early 90s grunge, Pearl Jam and stuff like that.
wearing flannel.
Yeah, he's wearing baggy shirt, jeans, work boots, whatever. He had a grunge feel even with his hair. And, I think it would have been nice because it's not like this was a big budget movie. And what I'm about to say isn't big budget. It's like, well, you could actually cut his hair and dye it blonde.
Yeah.
Wouldn't hurt anything, and it's not like where he came from, because I think it was Kentucky, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
he comes from Kentucky. It's not like you'd be like, oh no, nobody from Kentucky has blonde hair that's cut like that.
Well, and
we can't do that.
the interesting thing with his character was, they gave him a Kentuckian type accent.
Oh yeah,
And it was like, And sometimes he was in it, and then I noticed a few times it was like, it kind of went away.
right.
Huh. So again, it was like, it was like, do we or don't we? And I'm willing to bet they only filmed it X number of times. And so sometimes with the edit they used, he was in a regular accent, and sometimes it was in a Southern accent.
With Ron, Maisie Williams' character, she has short, red, kind of spiky hair in the comic. And in this, she had the hair length right, nice and short, and it was reddish. Yeah. But once again, not the actual. It wouldn't have been hard, and I'm being so picky here, but I'm sorry, when it's something as cheap as this to do a hairstyle, so people that grew up on the comics can look at it and go, oh yeah, they nailed it.
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing it? Because
yes,
going into this movie, I had no inclination that they would ever be in costumes. None. So I knew right out of the gate, they weren't wearing costumes.
Yep.
So I thought, well, the least you can do is make them look to the characters in the comics as close as possible. And all that would take is hairstyles. Even Roberto's hairstyle, he had short hair, but it really wasn't the same type.
He played the cocky character like he did. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And again, so the problem that I think this film fell into, and there were good things and bad things. The thing that this film didn't have was a definite personality. So it starts out slow, but it starts off as a thriller horror movie.
Right.
And it started working. It was like, oh, this is really interesting. Her powers come through, and it's almost like an emotional horror thriller. And you're pulling these parts up, and these bad things happen, and these creepy,
That's what I thought they did really well, because out of all the characters in the movie, Danny's character was the only one whose power I couldn't remember. And I even leaned over you during the movie at one point and said, "What's her power again?"
And I said, "Shh."
And he was like, "Shut up, I'm trying to watch a movie." Because I couldn't remember what her power was. So it was good the way they did it for the person going to the movie that knows nothing about it. because you're seeing, since she brings people's fears to life in the hospital, and I'm using air quotes for that, where they're all kept at, you're seeing, Ron's fear, which comes across like a horror type movie. And all the characters, the way they portrayed their fears coming across to them and manifesting gave it that horror movie vibe.
Yeah.
But then once obviously you realized, oh, that's what Danny's mutant power is to bring to life other people's fears, you're kind of, it's like the curtains pulled back. You're like, oh, this isn't a horror movie.
But see, it's done in her subconscious, so they call it psionics in the movie. Right. And in her subconscious, when she sleeps, it's like the demon bear comes out and it starts, not just on her, but it starts manifesting the fears of the other people around her. And it was really cool. And if they would have continued that, I would have probably put it on par with like Nightmare on Elm Street, which was just a great set of horror movies that dealt with these things when you sleep. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. It had that ability coming in, and they started it.
I guess it had it, but they would have had to do so much, in my opinion, and put it on par with that movie.
Well, but what I'm saying is that was the direction they were heading, and I was pretty cool with that. The problem is, this is where the movie loses its identity.
The wheels start falling off.
They do, and the plot starts falling apart when all of a sudden, you find out the little teaser about Essex, and you're like, oh, that's Mr. Sinister. Okay, right. So he's a bad guy. They're trapped in here. Dr. Reyes has the ability to put shields around everything to keep everybody locked in there. And then it turns into a superhero flick, like if you think about like the original X-Men. And it's not like it was the good ones like Logan and stuff like that. It turns into just a basic, almost generic superhero movie. So in my mind, I was sitting there going, either turn it and keep it as a horror movie and then with abilities, or just make it a superhero movie. And because they didn't, I thought the movie failed in some ways.
Well, and the only two threats that they actually had to physically fight in the movie were Ileana's manifestations, which was the smiling man. And there was a bunch of them. So basically, tall, lanky.
Think of like Slender Man.
Except the face, it was just a happy face mask, except it was a white instead of the happy face, which is yellow. Running around trying to get him. But and they had really grotesque teeth and stuff. When they pulled the mask off, there was no face. It was just basically a big mouth with sharp teeth like or whatever. Yeah. And they were just running after him. Slowly. And, since they were, things you could actually touch, they could, cut their arms off and beat them up and stuff.
And Ileana's soul sword was very effective, and which was cool. They had the few fight scenes that they had. Right. That was actually really neat.
And like Cannonball uses his power and takes out a whole mess of them.
Yep.
Which was pretty cool. But then the only other physical threat was obviously the Demon Bear.
Yeah.
Which the special effects on the Demon Bear I thought were awesome.
I thought it was great. So picture like a 2-story huge bear with big glowing eyes.
But then the body was just like this amorphous, like dark cloud smoke, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of like Bill Sienkiewicz interpreted it in the comics, just this amorphous shape where you only really saw the head and the teeth.
It was still better than Parallax from the Green Lantern movie.
Oh yeah, it was better than Parallax, which I like Green Lantern, but it was definitely better than Parallax and better than Galactus
from Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer.
Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
But so when the Demon Bear finally appears and they have to fight that, Danny's unconscious, so that is what I guess allows it to manifest itself.
It takes control over her.
It takes control over her, basically, yeah. So she's not even in the fight. Cannonball, I think, used his power once, so that was, to me, a huge letdown. I'm like, oh, come on. The dude literally used his power once against him. Sunspot, they did go all out with him and had his full body. Like, I was a little scared in the beginning because at first when he used his powers, it was just his hands, and I was like, oh, don't do that.
Yep.
And they finally did go full body
Where
CG
it's black,
with him, so that was cool. Ileana, they had the most fun with her sword and stuff. Ron, I gotta be honest, even though they went full wolf just once in a movie with her running down like a hallway, which was once again a real wolf. For the movie, when she was in her werewolf type appearance, I don't think they went far enough. I was disappointed because it was basically like, all right, give her some long fingernails, give her the pointy Spock ears,
Yep.
and then let's just add some patches of hair to the back of her neck and her cheeks,
Yep.
and her hands.
And then when Rain Sinclair like jumped on top of the demon bear and she just starts going to town, and it was like, And again, Maisie Williams, again, she had an accent because yes, and sometimes it was really there, and sometimes it quite wasn't there.
Because there were times I'm going, is she? What is that?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And then they developed the relationship between Rain Sinclair and then Daniel Moonstar, and it was an interesting. I saw what they were trying to do, and it wasn't from the comics, and it was really unnecessary for the story. They're just trying to develop this bond because Danny and her, they're the only two that they rely on each other, and the rest of the other kids were in like their own clique. There were things that worked and things that didn't.
It was just a forced relationship that, if you can take something away from a story and it doesn't affect the story, then it really doesn't need to be there. And that's usually what good film editing is about. And this one scene with them, getting close and then eventually kissing, but then, what's that noise? And they stop and they have to go investigate. So it couldn't go any farther like they wanted it to. Literally, it's like, you cut that out and it doesn't hurt the movie one iota. It literally didn't detract from the story. It didn't add to the story. It did nothing with their relationship. You saw, like, at first you were like, oh, this is sweet. They have this relationship like two sisters.
Yes.
And then you're like, okay, that's cool. That's good bonding. Like Dennis said, there are these two characters that don't fall into the rest of the clique with the other characters in the hospital. So they're bonding like sisters. You're like, sweet, nice, close sisters, kissing sisters.
Yep.
They went to the sisters from West Virginia.
I'm telling you.
So it just wasn't necessary. And look, I'm all fine with some girl-on-girl action, no problem. But I think the other thing was, I'm looking at Ron, Maisie Williams, and I'm just like, aren't you really young? And I don't even know how old she is.
We all know that from Game of Thrones.
But I didn't watch Game of Thrones.
I know you didn't, which we have to fix also. So the issue that I have was like the story. If you look how they built it up, it's Daniel Moonstar's story. It starts with her. It ends with her. She's really the glue that's supposed to deliver everything.
Right.
She's adequate, but you never get emotionally attached to her. No. You don't get emotionally attached to her storyline. Even when her tribe gets killed, you were like, okay. It was just missing stuff, whereas Ileana's...
exactly. Ileana's character was... her character, I think, was the only one that kind of had an arc. Because she started off as a total bitch. Right? You're like, oh my God, you're such a bitch. You're that girl. You're the
mean girl.
You're the mean girl.
Yep.
In the class, you're the mean girl. And then there's an actual arc to her, and in the end, she comes around, and you actually see her change and grow.
But she has to face and confront her fears because of Danny in the first place, and it does. So she's actually the most interesting character out of all of them, and the coolest too. I mean, hands down.
But because of the acting job and how she was written, I had more of a connection emotionally with what was happening to her than any of the other characters. Like, Sam Cannonball, honestly, he was just Debbie Downer the whole movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was it. It was like just flatline. It was like, okay, and this isn't anything against the actors, because we've all seen these actors in different roles really shine. And it's almost more on the directing, or maybe half directing and
script.
Script.
I'm going to say it's partly a script
too, because
issue.
it's kind of like,
so from what we read from the original source material, Ileana's character to me was the closest that it was in the comic books.
Right.
It, where they made enough changes to all of the other characters where they're kind of recognizable, but you've stripped away a lot of what made them interesting in the books. The only one that they didn't strip away was Ileana's, and I think, wasn't it Bob McLeod that weren't most of them?
Bob McLeod and Chris Claremont created all these characters except for Ileana, and that was Chris Claremont and Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yeah,
if I remember right.
Yeah.
So, and then we said it was going to be filled with spoilers. So the climax, obviously, of the movie is the fight with the demon bear. So they finally get, Danny's got to wake up. She's got to wake up so she can tame the bear.
She's got to confront it. She's got to confront it. It's destroyed the church, so this huge thing has destroyed everything.
It literally basically ate Dr. Reyes,
Yes.
Which was actually a fun scene.
It was.
So it all comes down to Danny. So when they finally wake her up, you're expecting something cool. I mean, you know what her power is. So
this flash, this thing, she's going to confront it.
She's going to do something.
And put it down.
And all she does is walk up to the bear, slowly going, basically kind of like Black Widow to the Incredible Hulk, going, "Sun's going down."
Great analogy. It is just like it.
The sun's going down. Calm down, big guy.
It's okay.
It's okay, big boy.
I'm in charge now.
And she's walking up to this bear. And like I said, the bear's head is huge. I mean, the bear's head, from the bottom of its jaw to the crown of its skull, is probably 12 feet.
It's like a dump truck.
So it's huge. And so basically, it's like this profile shot on screen of the bear's head lowered down, and she's walking up to it. Just calm down, and then she reaches out and touches the bear's snout and starts petting it like, "It's okay, big boy. It's okay. You can go back. We got this under control." And the bear the glow goes out of its eyes, and then basically just dissipates away in the smoke.
That's it.
And
There's your climax.
I'm like, are you effing kidding me? That's it? That cannot be it.
Where's the rest? Where's the... Oh, no, that really
that was it.
Oh.
And then, the sun comes up, and they realize, because Dr. Reyes is dead, that there's no force field dome around the school anymore, and they can actually leave. And
they leave.
And they leave.
They walk away. They walk out, and that's
they walk out. And now I will say, if there was an after-credit scene like there was supposed to be, that ending would have been fine with them walking away. Not the ending of how they defeated the bear, because that was weak-ass sauce. But them walking away would have been fine, because it fades to black, you see some credits, then boom, after-credit scene to roll you into a sequel.
Yep.
But because there's no after-credit scene, and I was talking to somebody else about this earlier, if Marvel does a new Mutants movie, it's going to be entirely recast, except, and I don't even believe this, but the only person I would see them not recasting is Ileana. But I bet if they did a new one, they would just take it in a totally different direction anyhow.
Yeah.
And because basically, this movie jumped in to a storyline that was 18 issues into the series. So the series was already out for a year and a half. When they jumped into this, when it got to this storyline, and New Mutants we're starting with this. It's almost like, this might be too much of an exaggeration, but I'll throw it out there and see what Dennis thinks, because he's the X-Men guy. It's almost like if the very first X-Men movie they ever put out was, hey guys, I know, for the first X-Men movie, let's do Death of Phoenix.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't work. No, and they've already had 2 attempts at that and screwed both of those.
No, but you know what I'm saying.
I do. Now you're just
of
bringing up bad memories.
Instead of doing an origin movie with the New Mutants and maybe tackling an earlier storyline that would set all the characters up better, and stuff.
I agree.
They went this route,
and it's not that it was a bad storyline; it was an interesting storyline. But again, I agree with Andy from the standpoint that we kind of needed original setup or more character development. Now, this movie was a concise 1.5 hours long.
Oh, yeah.
So if they would have done an extra 30 minutes and delved into some of the backgrounds of the characters, I think this would have worked better instead of just, dumping them in and trying to figure them out. And, and like, Magma was a character from the original source material.
Right. She wasn't
even in it, and that's okay.
If you're doing a movie, and I don't think they went into this movie going, it's going to be an 1.5 hours. So even if they thought, well, it'll be a 2-hour movie, you still don't want to load it up with too many characters. So I get it, because it's not like with the few they did have, they did a great job with character development. All that being said, I went back, I did reread the New Mutants Demon Bear saga because it was only 3 issues, and I've got the nice little trade paperback that came out in 1990. And, to summarize it, in the trade paperback, the basic gist is it starts off with Dani having nightmares of the Demon Bear, and she goes to the Danger Room in the X-Mansion, where the Danger Room is where the X-Men train. And she has, she basically is training against the bear. Whereas the other mutants are fighting, mechanical things, just different weird stuff. But nope, Dani's like, no, I need to train against the bear. And then she decides to trek out on her own and tackle the demon bear by herself. And the demon bear basically kicks her ass and tears her up. And they have to rush her to the hospital. So all the New Mutants that were in the movie, plus Magma, rush her to the hospital. She's in an operating room, and while she's in an operating room being worked on, Dani, that is, the Demon Bear manifests itself in the hospital, and there's a fight going on in the hospital between the Demon Bear and the New Mutants. And the Demon Bear, because he has magical powers, basically transports everybody to the Midwest to fight out there. So it goes from this hospital where it's snowing and stuff to the scorching heat of the Midwest. The fight goes there. The Demon Bear brings with him a cop and a nurse from the hospital, which he basically, you can say, infects and takes over their souls to use as combatants against the New Mutants. And long story short, the New Mutants win against the Demon Bear, and when they defeat the Demon Bear, the souls of Dani's parents, who were thought to have been murdered by the Demon Bear, are released, and it's a nice happy ending with a bow on it. I didn't do it justice. Trust me, it's a great storyline if you're looking for something to read.
It is a good storyline.
It's a really good story by Chris
paced.
Claremont.
I mean, it's
I burned through it.
Yeah, and it's a good pace. It's a good read. It's
visually stunning.
Yeah.
Coming from me, the art guy, Bill Sienkiewicz has been a guy I've always admired. He's a groundbreaker in the comic book art medium when it comes to his pen and ink, his painting, his mixed media work. He does it all, and he does it so well in this story because it is kind of a thriller, creepy type story, and his art just lends to it so well.
And it was a little bit different. They get trapped in a hospital, but it's in like this blizzard and stuff like that. And they can't leave, and it's not because of force fields, but it was just like they're stuck in this place. It has this claustrophobic feeling to the book. And this is one case where, again, the source material just winds up being much better than the visual movie that we just went and saw.
Yeah,
they both got their pluses and minuses, don't get me wrong.
But the source material definitely
it's just definitely better.
Well, it's like, not to get on a long thing about Avengers Endgame, but Infinity War and Endgame together as one big 4.5 hour movie is awesome. Now, is it directly 100% the source material? No.
Nope.
Infinity War is a lot different, but the basic aspects are the same, and they are both fantastic. So I can't say, oh, no, you need to read the source material. Whereas with this, I would definitely be like, oh, no, you have got to read the Demon Bear Saga source material. In fact, if you said, what should I do? If I can only see the movie or read the book, I'd say read the book.
As a matter of fact, it's exactly what I would say. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give 2 rankings. I'm going to give the comic book score for the movie and for the comic books. For the movie, I would give it a 6.0. It wasn't a disappointment. They could have done a lot of things better, but it wasn't the pile of garbage. So maybe it's because my expectations are lower. But I would give that a 6.0.
It was better. I know you'll agree with this. It was better than Dark Phoenix.
Yes, it was.
Which I went into this movie expecting it to be worse than Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, and I was just hoping it wasn't going to be Catwoman bad, which it definitely wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
This movie isn't even as good as Green Lantern.
This movie is way better than Green Lantern.
You're insane! If this movie did not have Ryan Reynolds.
That's true. That is the one thing that would happen. So I gave it a 6.0.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. This is one of the few times I'm not even going to vary. I'll go 6.0 as well. I can't go higher. The only reason I would say, run out and catch it on a big screen is one, if you are 2 things. If you have fatigue from not being able to go to a movie theater and you want to go to a movie theater, that's one reason. And, there were enough special effects in it with the Demon Bear and stuff that I think seeing it on the big screen makes it worthwhile for that.
Yep.
But, if you just want to wait because we only gave it a 6, hey, everybody got a TV that's at least bigger than 40 inches these days. If you've got that, you're good enough. You can wait. I would definitely read the book. So I'll give my grade on the book is 8.5. I think the original Demon Bear Saga gets 8.5 out of 10, hands down.
Yep, and I'm going to give it a 9.0. I think the original source material was just very well written, and it had that feeling to it. The claustrophobia, the thrill, the little bit of horror, it was just all there. And it just didn't carry over to the big screen in a lot of aspects. So I'm going to give it a 9.0. I think if you guys have not read it before, it's worth picking up the trade or issues 18, 19, and 20 of New Mutants from back in the day.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go, guys. Until next time, bye-bye.
See you later.
Until next week, grab your 3D glasses.
Get your favorite comic books, roll them up, and put them in your back pocket the way you should treat comics.
Throw your pigskin up on the mantle. This is Dennis.
This is Andy. Later, friends.